Are we all terrified? Okay, good. This is at Paris or Prairie, and we are sitting down with the one and only Joe Walsh. You're listening to Aacia in the Middle.
And turned away from Trump, which I thought was fair. I mean, Trump, I think it was a messaging issue more than a policy issue. I stood with Trump on most every policy he put forward, except for tariffs, except for some environmental things. Now, do you worry that once you did that, just from a game theory standpoint, is that when you divide the right, then all of a sudden, the next thing we do is we have a weaker right, and then all of a sudden we're getting all this ridiculous regulation, these ridiculous economic policies that are destined for failure. How are we supposed to fight this?
Well, so it's such a great fucking issue, and I pardon my language, guys.
Not at all.
But I'm a conservative, and what just so I know what are you? Give me a word to describe everybody politically.
Libertarian with environmental concerns.
So the four of us are probably pretty close politically. I am who I am politically, and I've taught American government. I've taught American history. I love this stuff. I've loved politics forever. I believe in this country. I believe in freedom and the rule of law. The reason why I'm a conservative is because I am scared to death of big, oppressive, authoritarian government.
Yeah.
I oppose Donald Trump because in my lifetime, he's the only wannabe dictator that's ever been in the White House. He's the only president in my lifetime who believed he was fucking above the law. So yeah. I don't care. And so that right there in my mind is why I could never, ever support him. And I want to be just clear about one thing. I did vote for him in 2016, and I did support him. I was on the radio all over the country. I was on Fox News every night. He blocked me on Twitter in 2016 because I would criticize him. I didn't love him. I didn't like him. I figured he's just a joke, and he wasn't Hillary. That's why I voted for him. I did a shitty job of paying attention to him during that first campaign because I didn't realize what a bad dude he was. I should have done a better job.
Bobby's really good with describing that, that he kind of covered up his character with just getting everybody on the bandwagon. And honestly, I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but I don't think he planned to win.
Yeah, I my personal stance was his brand was deteriorating a little bit. Right. The what was the name of his TV show? I don't even remember. The Apprentice.
The Apprentice.
The Apprentice ratings were going down. He was losing his spot, and I think he had no clue that he would win. And exactly. I talked about this in our conversation last week with David Weissman, that there's a philosophy that the fool precedes the savior, and what that means is the fool is the one who shines light on some truths that no one else dares to say. But they're a fool. Like he's a comedian. He's a joke. And again, I'm not out there saying that Trump is a joke or not a joke. I'm saying that his presidency was likely a joke. Yeah. And then he got in the Oval Office and he said some things that a lot of people, there was some truth in the things he said, and there was garbage surrounded by the way he said it. So this got me thinking that like the counter to Trump in 2016 was theoretically Hillary. So when the 2020 election came, I immediately looked to the Democratic Party. Okay. And I said, okay, who can I get behind here? And I was immediately drawn to Tulsi Gabbard, and they threw her off the stage. And I was immediately drawn to Andrew Yang, and they basically threw him off the stage. There's some policies I disagreed with Andrew Yang. But like Tulsi was my guy, for lack of a better word. I mean, she was like, and I was like, why won't they let her on the stage? Mm-hmm. And in a weird way, she was the Democrats' Trump because she was yelling at the people on her team in a very real way, just not using asshole and fat and stuff like that Trump would say. So
yeah, and you make a good point, and we're probably all aligned on this. Trump's a horrible human being, but in 16, our politics sucks. Hillary sucks. Both parties suck. Our politics is broken. We needed a disruptor. I think, and you go back to 16, I think Bernie would have beaten Trump. Bernie would have been a disruptor. Yeah. We needed a disruptor. The problem is Trump's a horrible, lawless person. But our politics is still broken. Joe Biden's not going to really solve anything. Of course not. We still need disruption because Andrew Yang and others have figured out our politics is broken.
It seems like we're talking about personalities here, which I think is important. I mean, President of the United States, that belongs on the ledger. But we are talking about the office that, Bill Clinton, FDR, people who couldn't tell the truth ever. And I mean, it's not exactly the most pristine, most wonderful human on the planet that we elect to this position. But to me, it seems like the barbarians at the gate from an economic standpoint. I mean, just yesterday, they talked about taking over the ports in California. They're literally like a disease spread. I'm talking about government in general, the Democrats specifically, spreading into every part of our economic life. It seems to me that we're discussing, Donald Trump's personality quirks, and I agree that his messaging was awful, and all he had to do was come across as compassionate. What are we going to do about this?
No, but I know, and I hear you, and there's some truth to that. But it's not personality with Trump. For me, if Trump was just a jerk, big deal. I disagreed with a lot of his policies. But if he were just a jerk, big deal. But it's way more than that. He believed he was above the law and he acted like he was above the law. You cannot have that in the presidency. And when it comes to the size of government and the influence of government, Donald Trump increased the debt faster than any president in my lifetime.
No
Trump
doubt.
Didn't give a damn about the debt. Donald Trump, if he could have, he would have shut down CNN all by himself. He would have had the government meddling in everything. Trump's no limited government guy, I guess is what I'm saying. There isn't a limited government political party.
Where are we going to find him then?
Well, the cool thing is, and we're all pretty young, I think we live in revolutionary times. I think the Republican Party is dying. I think the Democrat Party's kind of fucked up too. I think we don't realize it because we're living in the day-to-day stuff. But I think we're going to see a new major political party within 8 years. I think this whole thing is going to be shaken up big time.
So let me ask you, Joe, from your perspective, where is actually, let me rephrase this question. If there were going to be a third party, can the likes of somebody like you and Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard and me, can we find enough common ground? If you look, I saw a recent statistic that 25% of the people consider themselves Democratic base, 25% considers them Republican base, and right around 50% consider themselves independent. But that's a victory right there. Those are won elections. And I personally think they need to be local, but can people just take the three of us or all of us? Can we actually find enough common ground? And can that common ground is this doesn't work enough common ground to have a sort of middle party that actually does some damage?
Yeah, I wrote a piece about 4 or 5 months ago, and I basically said what we need is a radically centrist, common sense, get shit done party. We are where most Americans are. Most Americans are not where the crazy left is, and most Americans are not where the intolerant Trumpies are. Most Americans are center right, center left. Most Americans, want to keep most of their money, keep government out of their pocketbook. But you know what? You want to identify as whatever you want to identify, go ahead. You want to marry whoever you want to marry, go ahead. That's where most Americans are. Most Americans, what Pew, for the first time ever, more than 50% of Americans did not identify as either Republican or Democrat. So it's coming. The problem is the political system is structured not to allow it. So the structures need to be changed. When I was in Congress 8 years ago, I said, the system's broken. The fix is not going to come from within. The American people are going to have to rise up, change the way we elect people. Yang's talking about this, ranked choice voting, right? Open primaries, change the way we elect people. I think, and then by the way, there are a lot of guys with money who are fed up with both parties. We're beginning in the last few years to see them speak up. Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks and others. So money can solve a lot. I think it's going to happen.
It's interesting that you brought that up. So they're saying that Yang can put a dent in because he's working with around 40 million, I understand. But for him to really, come up as that outside candidate, he would need between 110 and 120.
You're talking money. Are you talking, what are you talking, money or people?
Money for.
Yeah, no, Andrew's a great guy, and I speak to him often. He can't do this. He's got a very high profile, which will help. And he's been out there for a couple of weeks talking about a new potential party. But major players with money would have to come in, because you have to go into every fucking state and get yourself on the ballot in every state. And state by state, we've got to change the way we elect people.
From a policy standpoint, you guys both, and I know where Bobby is on a lot of things, and I'm socially liberal too. So the way we thread the needle is to grab the, LGBT rights, whatever the hell rights you want, but also to grab, like Andrew Yang, we're talking about a guy who favors universal basic income. Universal basic income is a terrible idea, in my opinion. So if we get somebody who's fiscally and financially conservative and gets out of the way of businesses, but also can get that messaging across that social issues, we're liberal as hell. Environmental issues, we only get one environment. Conservatives can be conservationists at the same time. Am I on the right track of how we thread the needle so to not kill a party?
I think you are, and I'm on your track. And Andrew Yang, I love him, he's a good friend, is not on that track, because I agree with you about universal basic income. I don't like the idea. Andrew Yang has a problem a lot of people do with Facebook. He wants the government to intercede to do something about the Facebook. I want the government to leave Facebook and Twitter the hell alone. But what you're talking about is where you and I are, which is really more, when you say socially liberal and fiscally conservative, it's more libertarian. Free market, leave me alone. I don't know. That's where I am. I don't think most Americans are there. Andrew Yang has more of a populist following. Trump's following is populist. You talk about, nothing disappointed me more with Trump than, to me, Trump's a fucking dictator. But I hear from his supporters all the time, and they tell me they don't mind that he's a dictator as long as he gives them stuff they want. That goes against everything I believe. But I think too, and you hear that on the left too. Like the Democrats want government to take care of them in all these areas. I think you and me, the libertarians, I don't think we're in the majority.
So here's a question. And I asked you before if your Wikipedia page was right. So I'm going to ask you first. Did you work at the Milton and Rose Friedman Foundation?
I did. Long time ago.
So Jimmy's might jump through the screen and strangle me when I say this, but I'm actually pro UBI done correctly. And by done correctly, I want it to be the negative income tax that Milton Friedman proposed. So you guys familiar with this? Jimmy asked you, you know about this? I know Joe is, because he worked with the guy's life. But the way it would work is people would get a stipend, right? People below a certain level of income would get a stipend, and that stipend would be permanent. And it would be in the form of a prepaid income tax credit. Okay. And as you earned money in a job, you would give up a portion of that, not all of it, to equal the amount you made. So in other words, let's say it's $3,000 a month. Okay. And let's say you get a job that pays you $2,500 a month. You will now lose $1,500 a month of that benefit, right? So now instead of making $3,000 a month, in total, you're making $4,000, because you're making $2,500 from your job and $1,500 from the government. So there actually is incentive to work, because most people, if you replace UBI with the same amount of money, they'll say, why would I go to work and do that when I could just sit home and make that? But if you're actually giving people incentive to work by saying, yeah, you're going to get this, you can stay at $36,000 a year forever if you want. But if you want to get to $42,000 a year or $44,000 a year, you can go flip burgers, and we'll offset some, but not all of that. You know what I mean? So it incentivizes even people who don't have the sort of drive that we might relate to wanting to succeed, they'll go, well, I'll go get a part-time job. I'll make a couple of extra dollars and I'll actually improve their lives. Right. So it's a super interesting idea. It was introduced in the freaking 60s or 70s. I don't know. It was a black and white film that I saw it on, and it just is gone.
Right. And we, you and I, the four of us could spend 2 hours on UBI because it is an interesting issue. But when you hear about Friedman, and there are a number of conservative organizations over the years that have supported the idea of universal basic income, but generally in their models, they want universal basic income to replace all federal government assistance we have now. Sure. And that ain't never going to happen. But the political point is most Americans support the idea of UBI. Most Americans, it doesn't matter whether Republicans or Democrats are in charge. The studies show over the years, most Americans generally want government doing more for more people. That's not my philosophy, but that's kind of where we are.
No, but it's a beautiful theory. But here's where it falls apart. It'll spring up a cash economy too, where people don't want to claim income. So then the next government step will be, oh, we got to digitize everything to avoid this corruption thing, and then we end up at a cashless society. You know, for like Dr. Richard Thaler, one of the things that he won the Nobel Prize on, which they pretended he didn't win it on, was, you know, being a proponent of a cashless society. And that's not where we want to go, in my opinion. Have the government at any time be able to just pick through things. There's so many things. Theoretically, I love the notion of UBI, provided it replaced everything else. And like Joe said, no way, it's not gonna, right?
Yeah, I mean, we already have that cashless economy. You could talk to my barber. I'm sorry, that cash economy. You could talk to my barber about that, or the guy who's going to do some remodeling for somebody I know that just made a cash deal. So it already exists, right? So
yeah, no, but they're going to go. They want to go away from that and find reasons to say that it's corrupted, and now everybody's going to be forced into the banking system, and that's not what I want.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, we just have a disagreement. I'd like to go back to Joe, because one of the things that one of the things I asked the last guest about is, I like to say there's a gutter on both sides of the street, and why jump from one party to the next, which I see as one gutter to the next gutter. If we get more, like if you get everybody on the right who was fed up with Trump to go to the middle, and you get everybody on the left who considers, you know, Joe Biden to be the Obama presidency as much as people thought that George Bush was the Cheney presidency, right? And just have them all sort of meet in the middle and go, okay, what do we agree on? Do you think that that's possible? You know, we're all around the same age except for Aacia. If you got to the point, will we see that in our lifetime, where we could all actually take somebody from the middle and he's not just a disruptor of whether the right wins or the left wins?
Yeah, Aacia is like 17 years old. She
Something
can't even
like
vote yet.
Love you.
My God.
I liked it from the start.
Well, to the beginning of what you said, my friend, there are a number of people like me, and I left the Republican Party almost 2 years ago, who did join the Democratic Party. I have not, and I could not. I'm not a Democrat. So I'm kind of hanging out here in limbo. But look, I think this is where most people are. It's just having been in the game and having been in Congress, and the system is built. It's been built for hundreds of years to protect these two parties. And that system, that's the wall, that wall needs to come down. But the politicians aren't going to do it. I mean, my God, when I was in Congress, the first bill I introduced was term limits, limiting everybody in Congress to 6 years and 12 years. I couldn't find anybody in Congress to co-sign my legislation. They're not going to change the system. The best thing about Trump is he fucking woke people up who had never been involved before. And that's where I think we're at the beginning of this thing. I think change is coming. It's going to take some time.
We've talked about Trump quite a bit. And I I agree there was a messaging thing. As you may or may not know, Joe, Larry Kudlow and I have done work together for 15 years. I consider him a great friend. He's always told me that Donald Trump's a great guy. I reserve judgment. I don't know. I don't care. And this is the point I'm trying to make is that here's the part I don't care about. Isn't he gone? Are we really still thinking?
No. And I'm not jumping on you, but I'm just so fucking pissed off. No, he's not gone. He's the former president. He's the undisputed leader of one of our two major political parties. He's out there every day. He's going to run for president again. If you want to get elected as a president, you have to fucking kiss his feet. Of course, we're going to talk about him. He's not gone.
Okay, so tell me this then. If Ron DeSantis makes a big push, would you then support him? If when the primaries come, it seems like Donald Trump's become a non-entity through age or through maybe he's not interested anymore. Would you support Ron DeSantis?
Okay, here's where I'm going to piss you off. I'm going to give an answer.
Oh, yeah, it's easy to it's hard to piss me off is what I meant. Yeah,
but if Trump does run, nobody's going to challenge him. DeSantis, nobody will challenge him. I know DeSantis, they will not challenge him. If Trump doesn't run, I'm publicly on the record, and I'm probably alone on this. I cannot support anybody, any Republican who ever supported Donald Trump in 2020. So no, I could not support Ron DeSantis. I'm in the minority of the never Trumpers. I'm in the minority on that.
That surprises me because that to me means, and correct me where I'm wrong, that you think, I mean, God, it's got to be at least 50, 60% of the Republican Party is more hopelessly lost. They're done. Like they're irredeemable.
It's put me in a really shitty spot because you're right. Virtually any Republican running for president supported Trump in 2020. Mm-hmm. So which is why I have no future in that party anymore. I'm in the minority. Even most of the people who are quote unquote never Trump, most of them would vote for a Nikki Haley or a Mike Pompeo or a Ron DeSantis. I couldn't.
What about if this Democratic candidate? I can't see Joe Biden having another term, but yeah, and I don't even say that disrespectfully. I recognize things in Joe Biden that, quite frankly, I recognized in my father. So, that's a whole nother story. So what if the Democratic front runner or replacement, who is presumably be Kamala Harris, but you never know, was so distasteful for you? And then it was like a Ron DeSantis. What kind of a trick bag would that put you in? Would you go libertarian? Would you go Andrew Yang? What would you do?
Great question.
I'd probably consider libertarian or Andrew Yang, or if I believed again that DeSantis or whoever the Republican was a threat, not like Trump, but a threat, then I'd probably support the Democrat. Look, I supported Biden only because I believed Trump was a threat who had to lose, and Biden was the only person who could beat him.
Yeah.
That's all.
Which is why many people voted for Trump in 2016, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I may be in that same position again. And guys, I get that. I get that I'm in a small minority on this. Donald Trump attacked our elections, attacked our democracy, and incited an insurrection. Mm-hmm. Any Republican who did not speak out publicly against that, to me, I can never support. And DeSantis didn't.
So I want to ask you a question that I want to word this question correctly. I'm
sorry for screaming, by the way.
No, my microphones went off. I couldn't even hear any of it. I wanted to hear all the screaming. I hate technology sometimes. These you kids and your technology.
From a perspective of, do you think that, God, how do I word this? Hoodwinking the public, which is done, right, all the time, just saying, you know what, they can't handle it. Do you think that has a place in government? Do you think that's something where we should have somebody come out and go, you know what? I'm just going to fucking tell you what I think. And it doesn't really matter what I think, because I look at Congress like this. Like if I were a local congressman, I would literally have a piece of paper on my wall going, yeah, I'm voting on this on Tuesday. Come and tell me what you want me to do. And if somebody said to me, where are you? Well, I'm pro-choice, but what does it matter what I fucking think? Tell me where you want me to vote. I work for you. I always said that my stance, I would never run, by the way, but my stance would be, tell me what you want me to do. I work for you. That would be my stance.
Well, I agree with the second half of that. I do work. When I was in Congress, I did work for everybody in my district. Look, I didn't last long in politics because I said what I believed, and I didn't beat around the bush, and I wasn't politically correct. Politicians are not trained to be that way, Republican and Democrats. So I didn't last long. I spoke like this as a congressman. But I do think when you're a member of Congress and you represent people, yeah, you work for them, but it's got how you vote has got to be what you believe is best, a combination of either what you believe is best or what you think the people in your district want. But ideally, it's you've got to make that call because it's your vote. And if the people back home don't like it, they'll send your butt home in 2 years.
Isn't it their vote, though, Joe?
What?
Isn't the vote their vote? That's what I've always, and this is a legitimate question.
Well, but that's the magic of representative democracy. Yes, it is. But if I'm not representing you, you will vote. That's your vote. You will vote me out of office. If I represent a district that is anti-gun, overwhelmingly anti-gun, and I'm pro-gun like I am, I'm not going to last long. But I'm just telling you, I could never vote an anti-gun platform if that's not what my platform is.
Mm-hmm.
So what I missed some of this because when I had technical difficulties. What's the point? No, I would love a good takeaway. Like how can we don't the authoritarian on the right we didn't like the spending, and I agree with you on that too. Spending in good times I thought was awful. The left, just when you see some of the laws that they keep throwing at us that just seem so intrusive and so much authoritarian on their side too. Where can we possibly go? Like, give me the candidate.
Well, we talk about authoritarianism. You've got Republican governors right now forcing private companies to make decisions. Where I come from, I believe in freedom. That restaurant down the street, if they want me to wear a shirt to eat a meal, then I have to wear a shirt. If I work at that restaurant and my boss says you got to be vaccinated, then I got to be vaccinated. Right now, though, we have Republicans who are forcing that restaurant owner. They're not allowing that restaurant owner to set his own rules. So we live in a scary time right now. Where
I agree with you on all those things. Absolutely. When we see Abbott doing that in Texas and DeSantis doing that in Florida, that's not right. I own a restaurant, Branson Palatine, Illinois. If it was Joe's been to many times. That's one thing they missed the boat on. I mean, conservatives want them to not say that, and they do it all the time. This is just mind-boggling to me that they just can't get that through their head.
Well. They can get it through their heads because I've had plenty of private conversations with them, and they understand it. They can't say it now because Trump came along, and so a lot of these things that they believed in, they can't talk about anymore because of Trump. So I don't know. Where do you turn? Look, you guys are going to disagree with me. I think we live in a very unusual time right now where our democracy is being threatened. So I'm all about trying to save our democracy, and then we can fight about issues later. So I don't know where you turn. To me, I will say this, the authoritarianism on the right is the bigger threat to democracy than anything the left wants to do, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree, but we can live with not agreeing. I mean, there's a lot of people I don't agree with. And I agree that both things are bad. I can't be with you on that, but I love the conversation so far.
But to your point, I don't know. I don't see a Democrat that I like, that I'd support, and I don't see a Republican that I'd like and I'd support.
Yeah. Well,
So now that brings me to the question of what you think about people like me, which I guess is now people like us, Joe, where I can't not vote, but I also can't vote for somebody who I just don't think is there to do anything for, I don't want to say for me, but that's what it is, right?
Let me throw this back at you
Shoot.
three. Say in 2024, it's Trump versus Kamala Harris. What are you doing?
Libertarian.
Trump.
Lib.
Terrible.
By the way,
embarrassing, you guys.
By the way, there's been many times where I cast a vote and then I go home and take as hot a shower as my body can stand. I've done this a million times, and I don't vote for candidates. I vote against candidates. It's been that way most of my adult life. So
God, it's pathetic, isn't it? That we have
yeah,
to
it's pathetic, but that's where I live, right? Yeah.
It's absolutely pathetic.
I think we're going.
Joe, where do you come out on this?
I gotta say this real quick. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
This is why I'm so glad, Joe, you and I talked about, is this going to be audio or video? You keep talking about how you can't get away with yelling and kind of having the aggressive delivery that you do. To me, that comes across as so honest and compelling.